Here we go. Hi guys. Just checking the mic levels here. Papin Vlees, Moroch. Okay, it's working. So, as we start this afternoon session, we are going to be doing it at panel style. I don't know what your view is like that side, so I apologize. The pulpit is in the way, so I will try to also direct my attention this way, even though the panel is here. So we are going to be discussing digital marketing trends that are emerging and are giving some of our clients or clients we're seeing in the industry a competitive edge, especially those ones that are taking good advantage of those digital marketing trends. Obviously, we only have 50 minutes, and so we can't cover every single one. So please don't think we only know the ones we're going to discuss. And then secondly, Ricardo's going to have to excuse himself in a little bit because there's an emergency client thing that he needs to go do. So we'll start with him. And if you've got questions, again, feel free to interrupt in between. The more interactive, the better. Okay? Phenomenal. Let me start by introducing the panel. My name is Mokgale, and I'm the marketing director. I'm kidding. You guys made a typo on that. I'm the managing director of Carat Johannesburg. You saw it, right? I'm like, technically it's the same thing. I'm always selling the business, isn't it? Yeah, right. So yeah. I'm the managing director of Carat. This is Ricardo Lopez, and he heads up the Red Star, the Densu Red Star unit at Carat. This is my lovely Navasha. She works for Visium. She's the head of digital in the Visium business. And that is Kanyu, so we call him Ziggy. And he heads up head of digital for one of our clients in Carat. So these guys are well versed in the digital marketing space and the as well as the media space. And so I love that they can talk both digital as well as media. And so guys, I'm gonna start with you, Ricardo, and let's talk a little bit about privacy, right? And data privacy, which is one of the trends that we're seeing largely impacting. I think I don't need to belabor the point about GDPR. Obviously you saw the last 2 days, that's been a very recurring thing. But I think let's localize it a little bit and talk a little bit about South Africa, right? And Poppy. And what the Privacy Act as well as the Poppy laws mean for us as digital marketers and in turn our clients.
Yeah, hi guys. I guess I'll preface this with this is an opinion, and this is what I've seen and where I think things are going and the challenges that I'm seeing clients and agencies facing. So I guess the best way to start with the privacy would be Cambridge Analytica kind of shook everything up and everyone kind of woke up to the fact that things were being done with our data that we didn't necessarily understand or know about. And I think particularly that started the discussion around what's happening with my data, where's it going, where's it being stored, and how's it being used. I think any individual within the room that is exposed to a European-based business would probably have started feeling that earlier, and they're probably sitting in a position where there's a lot of compliance coming through at the moment around data privacy and adhering to the GDPR. And I mean, from what I've seen and the documents I've read, in terms of Poppy and GDPR, I've kind of just melded the two together for myself just to simplify it. I think we live in a space where things are becoming very quickly overcomplicated. I don't know about you, but I feel overwhelmed a lot of the times as a practitioner within this industry around all the things that we're trying to keep ahead of. And data privacy is no different for me. So what I've done to kind of make sense of it all for myself is broken it down to 3 key things. The first thing is consent. Very simply, you need explicit consent to collect anyone's data. It can't be oh, are you aware? It needs to be, we will be collecting your data. Yes, I accept. Not, and I think where we're starting to see it changes is within the cookie space and the cookie policies within sites, where previously they just used to give you a disclaimer saying we use cookies, and then you closed the notification. Now we're starting to see a lot more sophistication in options around what those cookies are doing for you in terms of marketing, website analytics, etc. So we're moving into a space where we're going to have to give individuals the rights to explicitly consent to collecting data, and it can't be. And I cannot stress this more. It needs to be very intentional. We can't go and say, oh, by the way, maybe we're going to be doing some stuff. It's do you consent, yes or no, black and white. So I think that's the first piece is get consent. I think the next piece then is purpose. So the key thing to remember is when getting consent, you need to be very specific around the purpose for which you're collecting that data. And you can only then collect the data for the purpose that you have stipulated. So if you're collecting data and you're saying we're collecting data for the use of direct mailing, then technically you can't use that data to go do a marketing campaign or media campaign. I think by and large at this point in time, social media is still a very gray space because of the way that your personal data has been hashed. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of movement in that space, and I think we're going to start seeing GDPR probably start clamping down on that as well. But for me, it's ensuring that you're very clear on the purpose for the collection of that data. And I think we're gonna have to make sure that we're very clear about why we're collecting that data. The last piece then, in my mind, is security. So essentially it stipulates that you cannot allow for any unlawful or unauthorized access or processing of their personal data while it's being collected. And so those are the three key things that I've kind of summarized in my mind to make sense of where data privacy is going. And that kind of steers a lot of the discussions I'm having with both in teams internally, but also with clients. I think we're going to see some interesting movements, particularly around what that means for data, the tech stack from an ad tech perspective. So I think my view with clients is always, I don't want to handle your data, not because there's an issue of responsibility or lack of responsibility on my side. I want to ensure that there are less hands handling the data than required. So if you own your own your tech stack as a client, you're able to ingest that first-party data directly into the stack without passing it on to anyone else to have that ingested.
So what does that then mean for businesses that haven't started building their own DMPs, for example?
I mean, look, I think by and large, we all believe that we're running and sprinting, and we think we're all advanced in digital, and we're really on the edge here. But I think the realization is it's not too late. Get started now. I think work with your agency partners on what a tech stack looks for you. Ensure that you understand what you require from a DMP perspective to whether or not you want to take on the trading desk on your side, so owning the DV360 to campaign manager, etc. I think just build out that stack, understand why you're building it out, and start now. Start having these conversations now. I think there's a feeling sometimes that agencies are trying to hold on to the stack to ensure that they can retain business. And my opinion is always of the fact that give client control over their own stack and give them the transparency. The value we add as agencies isn't that we own your data or control your data, it's that we're able to enrich, add value, and use that data to get you better outcomes. I think what we're going to need to start doing on our side is giving you tech that can augment the stack that you have. But very shortly, I think start the process. My advice to any client is always own your data and own the platforms that house that data. Don't let an agency own it. It will create issues for you further down the line.
Love that. Any quick comments or questions around data and privacy and kind of Ricardo's view on where we're going? There's a question over there. Yes. Okay, Kijima boy.
It's a big ass mic.
Hey.
Hey.
So my question is pretty much on the enforcement of POPI. What we've seen with Cambridge and Analytica is that those guys got away scot-free, right?
Yeah.
I mean to say, paying $500,000 to a giant like Facebook, or from a giant like Facebook, is nothing. How do you think that's going to be different in South Africa, if at all, if it will be at all?
So, candidly, I don't know. I think when it comes to regulation, there's always an issue with government trying to control things. I think there's other issues that creep into that. Bureaucracy gets in the way, etc. The thing that keeps me up at night is not becoming the first case study. So I think the one thing to keep in mind is wherever there's an opportunity, someone will take advantage of it. And I would not be surprised if we see a class action suit opened up by someone or a group of people to take advantage of the system. I think if my understanding and interpretation of GDPR and POPI is correct, I can, as a person that owns my own data, go to MTN, Vodacom, Cell-C, ask them where my data is, where's it being housed, and where the logs are for the use of that data, and for how and exactly how it was used. If they do not give me that, then they're on breach of both POPI and GDPR, and then there's fines. So I don't know. I think we're still trying to. The government's still trying to set up that piece of the puzzle on that side, and I think you're going to probably find the private sector, especially lawyers, get involved and take it from their side. So my piece is, yeah, you can continue thinking that it's not going to go anywhere. I would rather not be the case study. So I ensure that we are GDPR compliant and we don't cross that.
And in a nutshell, lawyers are about to get more business. There's another question over there.
Thank you. My name is Unity. I'm representing the ASF.
Hey, Unity.
I think we have nice life problems in our company. I see it like that because we have an opportunity to start, organizing or getting our house in order, because at the moment, data is scattered all over with cell phones, salespeople. We don't have a central hub for the data. And that's another reason why I'm here. My takeaway today is how do I go back and with our team try to start, the whole process of organizing everything.
So that's a great question. I think to make you feel it, if it makes you feel any better, I don't think anyone's got a handle of their data. I think there's a very small percentage of clients, advertisers, agencies that have full understanding of what's available in the data that they have, and it's housed in a place that they can access, and there's a taxonomy in place or data logic that allows them to actually use it. So I think what you could do is start the discussion internally. I find a lot of clients are starting to look to consultants to help make sense of it all and start that journey. The one thing that I will say is this: there's no amount of tech that I've seen that will solve the problem for you. And I think, unfortunately, we're going into a space where we believe that if we can just get that tech, that it will solve all our data issues. The only way we're going to solve data issues is by great thinking. So to answer your question, I'd say whether you go with a consultant or an agency partner, or you guys decide to do it internally, start with thinking, start understanding what you want to get out of it and what you need to do with that data to get what you want out of it, and then start looking at what you need to get in terms of tech suppliers to make that happen. Don't go try to get the tech and suppliers before you do that. You're gonna battle. And remember, at the end of the day, no matter what it is, we're all selling. So if you've got a need and someone goes, I can service it, they'll have no issue pushing it in. So make sure you're very clear about what you want to do with your data and the data strategy you have, and then start looking at bringing the suppliers in. I hope that helps.
Fantastic. Okay, for the sake of time,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful segue in the points you were making around the usage of a tech stack, DMP for an organization, which can lead to then even to Jay's talk earlier on about personalization. So Nivasha, do you want to talk a little bit about personalization and how it's emerging as a trend, kind of just what you've seen, what you've observed, and what the opportunities are?
So I think personalization's become something that everyone speaks about, but nobody's actually doing it 100% correctly. We're all trying very hard to be in the moment, right there, telling some kind of story that speaks to me at a moment. But I think where we're really falling short is that we overcomplicate the message. So we put out these complex messages that nobody understands except the brand, and we expect a user or a normal consumer to actually understand what we're saying. So I think for me, personalization's become something that everyone throws around, and it's almost become like, oh, we have this amazing personalization strategy, and that's not a thing. For me, personally, personalization is key in everything, as ironic as that sounds. But the touch points are so important, and I think the more we moving towards doing omni-channel marketing instead of multi-channel marketing, that personalization is changing, and the brands that are properly succeeding are the ones that understand how the message needs to be segmented, rather than the brands that are just taking a deep dive and saying, oh, but I'm doing this omni-channel campaign. And
what does, for the sake of disambiguity, what does omni-channel mean?
So basically, like, if I had to simplify it in a nutshell, an omni-channel strategy is very much making sure that even though you're using multiple touch points, the message that you're communicating is done in a unified manner. Multi-channel means you're running a campaign where you've got the same, well, it's not the same message, but you're trying to tell the same journey across multiple touch points.
Okay.
So for me, omni-channel marketing is more centralizing the message, but making sure that it's channel relevant.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, so what are the opportunities then for businesses that want to start going into, you know, personalizing more? I mean, I think I'm inspired post Jay's conversation, right? His presentation around the power of personalization and what it can achieve for businesses. So what then is my first step if that's what I want to do?
I think if your first step is personalization, you need to identify exactly what it is you're trying to achieve as a business.
Right.
If you don't have a clear direction as a business and you're just like, oh, this is my segmentation plan and I want you to reach everyone in the segmentation plan, then it's not a key strategy for you.
Okay.
You need to be very clear on what it is that the business needs to do in that segment. Don't just come back at me and say, oh, this is our segmentation plan, target all of these areas, because then it's not segmentation. It's basically you just splitting it up to align to your KPI, which isn't really a KPI. It's just your fancy way of saying we have a plan in place.
So have you ever found yourself in a space where the KPIs for the client and the desire to do personalization are clashing?
Yes, 100% all the time. I think no matter what field you work across, you're going to constantly have this where you can't tell the difference and you can't actually define very clearly what the KPI was for that segment, because the way that businesses are structured is they still have an overarching KPI that they're working towards and they don't have specific targets per segment. So for me, that's one of the biggest issues that I see on a daily basis.
I think, sorry,
Very interesting. Yeah,
just,
Ziggy?
just to add to that point, I think if you structure yourself around specific, having one tool, therefore, I think what's happening right now is that we're also guilty of it from our side, is that we're running multi-channel. You think it's omni-channel, but it's multi-channel. And the reason why I say this is because, let's say, for example, you're running on Facebook, you're running on Twitter, and you're running on LinkedIn. And you're trying to catch this one person or this group of people. But actually, in fact, when you think about it, in total, the frequency on you reaching them, you've probably reached them 15 times. And the omni-channel way is using one tool that can actually cap the frequency through that person going through all those channels. So in essence, through your journey of during the day, I prefer this, during the afternoon, I prefer that, and in the morning, I do this, is you're giving me a messaging within the right time, the right space, but the cap of the frequency there is that I'm seeing the message 3 times. And I get it then. Instead of what's happening is I see it 3 times on this platform today, and then I'm on 6 other platforms, and that same client is on those 6 other platforms. Therefore, I'm seeing that message. Actually, the platform is telling me 3 times, but overall, my journey of just being on the internet, I've seen that ad 20 times.
Sheesh.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to the personalization part, right?
Yeah.
We're personalizing messaging, but we're not personalizing it based on a user's behavior. So we'll push the same message, which is a personalized message, but we'll push it throughout the day, and we forget that a user has multiple touch points. So I think where we're falling short is that because we're limited on the resource side from a creative point of view, and because we all know creative FTEs don't ever cover the scope of a job, I think the most important thing for us to note is that multiple layers of messaging is the most important thing to hit that consumer at the right touch point. And that's where the personalization is going to drive impact.
Yeah.
And if we don't get that part right, then we're not driving an omni-channel discussion.
So I think one of the thoughts I've been having on personalization is this is all assuming that someone wants you to contact them. And I think if you start thinking about the data privacy piece and people start getting a bit more savvy, is just because we can do all of this doesn't mean we're going to be allowed to do it. And I think that's the one thing that we haven't been thinking about is we've gone down this path of trying to get very sophisticated, and we want to drive personalization, and we're discussing how do we get that at scale, because that's a whole nother challenge altogether. But we fundamentally forget that we're dealing with people, not browsers, although we only measure browsers, we're dealing with people, and people will have the say whether or not we want to communicate with them. So, I mean, it's not for today's discussion, I think, but an interesting point would be, what does a world of personalization look like where you can't contact someone and they don't want you to contact them?
Well, I think that's something we do need to discuss, because if you look at where the new legislation is going,
Yeah.
that's something that's becoming more prevalent. And I mean, a lot of companies are starting to think, what about when I don't have cookie-based data?
Yeah.
What do we start doing then? Like, is the data that we've collected still going to be something we can use? And if we can repurpose it, how do we repurpose it? And I think that conversation is very prevalent for
Yeah.
us. But I think it's also something that we can adjust and work with, right? So there's lots of ways, like first-party data is not going to disappear. Your first-party data is still owned data, and that's something that more marketers need to start investing in. So, I mean, aside from our agencies, I don't think any of the clients that we really truly service understand the power of the data that they have sitting in their channels. A lot of the time it's the agency people pushing, saying, please can I have this audience to do this, and please can I have this to do this. But none of the marketing teams truly understand how their data can become quantifiable for them.
So I think part of this, the challenge is, sorry Donald, I think part of the challenge is, I agree, I think some parties don't understand the value that they can get out. I think other parties understand the value that they want to get out, but they just can't, because the structure that they have on their side doesn't allow it. And I think this goes back to the discussion we're having down there.
Yeah,
is,
exactly.
you know, when you're going to go down this journey, understand what you want to use the data for, because you want to set yourself up for success. But yeah, I think just from I think what we're going to start seeing from a personalization perspective, one of the chuckles that I often have is individuals that start understanding how the system is being used to catch them, they're going to start using that same system to catch the advertiser and agency. So if I think about my behavior now when I'm booking tickets to go overseas, I know that I'm going to go to the cart and I'm going to abandon it, and then I'm going to wait for you to come after me, because I know you've retargeted me, and then I'm going to wait for a deal that makes sense.
Oh, you're a sneaky bugger, man.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where this goes.
Okay. He's one of the guys that clears their caches, I imagine.
Yeah.
So what is one of the other, like, you know, major emerging trends that you've picked up in the digital marketing space?
So I think it's not a, because I mean, whenever I hear trends, and then it's almost the same thing every year. But I think for me, it's more the evolution of video, and the power of the consumer and video, and how brands are playing into it. So for instance, I mean, the latest stats now are saying that 42% of internet users are using or watching videos through their mobile. I think, I mean, logically, that makes sense, just given the climate that we're in, and we see that ever rising, especially in our climate, in terms of mobile penetration. Yeah. But what I'm interesting enough, what I'm seeing throughout and throughout everything is that, on one hand, I think video, when we hear video and we hear online video, we think we need the biggest production. This is our turn to do our own TVC on your mobile screen, but it's not. And I think understanding that, I'm going to jump around because there's a lot of thoughts in this, but understanding from a client side is that, I mean, we've mentioned it a lot, is what are you trying to achieve with your video, and why are you actually showing me this video? And what you're seeing is that sometimes we also, to a bit detrimental, is we say, the video must be 10 seconds. Why is it 10 seconds? I mean, there's very few times where I've seen a Nike ad that's 10 seconds, but people are really willing to watch it. So for me, it's one, video production. Back to my original point, video production. And media partners are becoming smarter and realizing that sometimes creative agencies just cannot get you what they need you to get. So what they do now is you have media partners absorbing those costs, absorbing whatever they can, because they already know that the marketing budget is shrinking. If they have to wait for the media, and things are getting canceled. So many times have you heard, we're running this campaign, client says yes, 2 days before they're saying it's canceled, and then that already ruins the reputational damage. So what media partners are doing is that they're taking ownership of video content. They're taking ownership of creation of video production, and it's setting it as an added-on value for us, be the agencies, and therefore, in a nice way, we don't really have to use a creative agency and say, look, actually, you know what, we've got this package for you. So that's one in terms of video production. The other one is the power and the influence that video has in terms of your search engine marketing and SEO. So, I mean, you're soon, if not now, search is now, as soon as you start searching on your Google, instead of search ads, what you'll get is videos, according to what your keyword was. So now what they're linking is YouTube and Google search are married together because people are starting to realize that the actual next search engine is YouTube. People are no longer going to Google, scrolling down, then going to YouTube. They're going straight to YouTube and saying, where can I get this? How do you fix this? And that power, and that all links to your website, which is the SEO. And that's an ecosystem that people forget about, is that if your website's strong enough, that means when someone searches against all the bids you go against, you go higher, which means it's cheaper, more people see your ad, and then in relation, they do whatever action that they need to do. So it's the power of knowing that search is not just, I mean, video is not just, it's not an isolated thing. It's actually, you need to think of it from a search point of view, because that's where people are moving towards. They're searching for the content they want, and no longer you are force feeding them. And the power of consumer now is, we already got the skip button, but also just in terms of just video in general. I mean, on average days, about 3 hours people spend on video content. And when I say video content, it's TV, it's people in the office, and it's you going home or watching from home. And now people are choosing how to spend those 2-3 hours around video content. And I think for us, it's now realizing that what is the role and the intention of you using video, and what do you want to get out of it? And that's key, because whether it's 10 seconds or 2 minutes, we've seen from video influencers that people can watch 30-minute clips. So gone are the days where gone are the days where you're saying people's attention span is only for 15 seconds. Because actually, maybe your ad attention span is 2 seconds, but when I'm watching about how to cut my hair, or how the ladies in the office, it's how to do the makeup, the contouring, the lining. Trust, I've learned quite a bit, so thank you, I got you.
It's been watching those
so I
tutorials.
respect ladies, no longer do I complain about my girlfriend's hour, but you can start to see that people are deciding how to use their time, and realizing that the relevancy of me choosing which video content to watch, it doesn't matter how long. Yeah. So gone is a time where the seconds or the minutes matter, but it's what you put in those seconds,
so it's the relevance,
and the minutes that matter.
And I think a lot of the brands that are doing it right are not just putting out, this is my product, buy my product in the video. They're telling you a story that's making you come back and find out more. So they're not using it as a means of pushing a product, they're using it as a hook to get you to be more involved with them. And that goes back to the community element of the video stuff, right? We want to drive community, no matter what we're doing. If you look at all the different touch points, what we're basically trying to do is build our own little communities. And the easiest way to build community is to use that video and tell that story in a powerful way.
Very interesting. Do we have any comments or questions around both personalization and video and its usage? No?
I've got a provocation.
Let's go.
So, I think if we had a word cloud, Ziggy, of your conversation, there'd be a lot of content coming out. And I think that naturally happens when you talk about video. I think one of the thoughts that has kind of been lingering in my mind for a while is, at what point do we draw the line around content creation and remembering what business we're in as an advertiser? Okay. So Red Bull, they went down this path, energy drink.
Yeah.
And they started looking at content creation, and eventually content creation and events became their business, with the energy drink part of the side of the business actually being smaller than the overarching rest of the business at the moment from a contribution to profitability.
Yeah.
So as an advertiser, and I don't have the answer, so I'm just raising it because it's a thought that's been sitting with me, and hopefully someone else has an answer.
Okay.
When is enough in content development, and when do you start crossing that line to the point where your business is fundamentally changing, trying to hunt down more content? Because I think at some point you could start going into a dangerous space where your marketing department exists to create content, not to sell product or help improve brand. And I think that's a balance that we're going to have to get used to, because I think we can go down this road of like we've got to be storytellers, and we need to make sure that we're going on this epic journey. And actually TV ads have been running for years and they've been working. And you create one ad and you hopefully sweat it for 2 years and you get your money's worth. So at what point do you actually cross that threshold and you become a content creator and not a bank, a FMCG-based business selling soft drinks? So I think it's a thought. I don't have an answer, but it's definitely a thought that I'd like to plant, is just be careful the journey you start, because you might find that you go down a rabbit hole, unnecessarily so.
Yeah. I think, Jay had a very good point earlier on, speaking about testing and learning, and doing pilots, saying that one of the best ways to be able to strike that balance is just to test and learn and check what the success rates is before you kind of overinvest and scale. And I think the question you're asking is also around whether or not businesses are prepared to almost disrupt their own models. Yeah, and I think some of the most successful businesses have done that, right? So if you look at the evolution of Netflix, the guys were renting videos, dude, right? So they went from renting videos to investing money into producing content. And I think for them, it makes a lot of sense. But I think in a Red Bull's case, you wouldn't have thought that, to be like a silo that they would go to. And it was fascinating. I think they probably did a test and learn as well with some events, and then they saw the uptake. And then they realized that actually, the energy drink is becoming by the by in the greater scheme of things for them. So I think it's interesting to see if businesses are actually prepared to disrupt their own businesses. I think that is going to be the next step as far as the growth and I suppose the challenging and the disruption for businesses, is how far are they willing to go to challenge themselves. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about omnichannel, because you touched on it there, Shivani. Do we have a question or comment? Okay, Noah.
So just before we move off the evolution of video, does the skip button, or should the skip button, inform how we create video content or influence how we create video content?
Okay.
Wait, does the skip button, say it again, influence? Should it influence?
The way we create the video.
That's a great question.
That's sure. Look, I look at it two ways, right? I might not answer you, but I look at it two ways. I think the beauty of digital is I never really take any result negatively, because I always feel like I'm learning from it, right? So there's that trick where you try. There's people who've mastered that skip button. Have you seen those ads where, for example, the Audi did an ad about how fast their car was, and they did it and they showed it in 5-6 seconds. So before they even skipped it, you already seen the ad, and that's so that's using the skip button to your advantage, and knowing that, okay, fine, I'm going to lose this person. You know how we are. We're itching. We just can't wait for the skip. We can't wait for the skip. So we're itching. So they said, okay, cool. We already know. So how do we outplay that skip button to the point where, but you see how you married how the speed of the car, the relevance, and then obviously played around the button and that whole that people just don't have time. So they had an ad around that, and then also a skip button, because a skip button for me, it also tells you the truth about your ad and the content and the relativeness. If so many people are skipping, then it just tells you the truth that the ad just is not making sense.
Or your targeting is wrong.
Or your targeting is wrong. So it's not a blame of your creative, and this is not a creative blame, but it's a learning from a creative and media and saying, okay, fine, what am I getting wrong? And sometimes is it through the different audiences that I'm choosing, the ratio or the skip button percentage between those audiences are different, and I'm starting to realize that, you know what, there's this audience that I'm in 95% of every single time. That means I'm just getting it wrong. So for me, the skip button, you shouldn't be scared of it because it's just letting you know more information about the relevancy of your ad. And it's also telling you that you've got 5 seconds to capture me. You've got 5 seconds to absorb me and to say, okay, fine. And if you can get that because gone are the days where it's a TV ad and you can do a nice Alan Gray ad and people are just sitting on the couch, just can't wait. And then like after that they feel so great and then they watch their show. At the end of the day, you're going into a space that people are intentionally going to watch something they watch. So you are interrupting them. So if you are interrupting them, give me something that is relevant to me and maybe I'll give you the extra 10 seconds afterwards. Sure. So from my side is do not be scared of the button, but use that as a learning to see, okay, fine, how can I improve? And you start learning that, okay, fine, with separate audiences, you can see that people are watching this video, 90% of people watching it up to a specific point. So you can start to seeing that people are absorbing your content from this point to this point. What are they absorbing? And did they get what you want? Because what you end up realizing that your call to action or what you actually, your unique selling point is at the last part of the video, and everybody skipped it already. So like Donald said, it's learning, but do not be afraid of the skip button.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to leave you with a thought. I think we're measuring the wrong things. And I think we've gotten into this bad habit of looking at media KPIs and start measuring success by those KPIs. What's the view-through rate? How many completed views did we get? Did it land? And I think we need to, as an industry, start shifting the way we look at measurement to be a more holistic view and start taking into consideration both brand and business outcomes alongside those media KPIs. So on YouTube, if you spend enough money, you can do a brand uplift. Let's forget that people are marking their own homework at the moment. There are tools available to measure whether or not that ad has landed in the consumer's mind and whether or not the key message has landed. You can look at all the completed views you want. It's never going to tell you that. It's just going to tell you that someone saw it or by chance saw it. I don't know if I went to the bathroom quickly while my phone was idly running there or was actually listening to music, and so those completed views were running and the browser wasn't even open, because that's how I listen to music. So I guess the thought is start thinking about measurement differently, because views aren't necessarily the best KPI. Yeah, so use business and brand outcomes. Start looking at that. Thank you.
He's preaching.
Thank you very much.
Amen.
And guys, I have to run.
You can go, buddy.
Thank you
can
so
go.
much.
Yeah, get us that FTE. No? That's Ricardo. Are you happy with the answer? Yeah. Look, I think as far as video is concerned, for me, it actually fascinates me that video is growing even in South Africa, where data prices are so exorbitant. In Kenya, it literally is a fraction of the cost that we get in South Africa, yet we're still growing in videos. At some point, I saw Vodacom did a trade exchange with Facebook saying, we can get your data for free as long as you, what did they say? Give us your data and you can get Facebook for free. Do you guys remember that? And what they were doing there is they were actually collecting data, and they were stacking it against their first-party data to be able to measure and track audiences both on Facebook and kind of obviously using their own first-party data. So we're starting to see other businesses use kind of inventive ways to collect customer data, and I'm sure obviously ingest it into their DMP platforms and start personalizing or at least knowing kind of who they're targeting at any given point in time. But my question for you then, Ziggy, is in light of the increasing costs of data in South Africa, how do you think advertisers should be taking advantage of the growth of video?
I think video is just a format.
Okay.
I think you can't isolate video from your overall marketing strategy. You have to understand, client. You have to understand what is your actual strategy and what do you actually want to get out of this, right? And you start realizing, segmenting, okay, fine, video is a component of my overall strategy. And out of video, what is the role that I want to get out of it? And you can use video as an educational job, because the problem is, as a client, not many people are understanding my product. And you start understanding that, okay, fine, to the audiences that I have, I'm starting to realize that either one, my product is too lengthy and no one really understands, and so understanding that, I say, okay, fine, this is my target audience, and I start realizing, okay, what is the best way for people to understand and absorb my product so that eventually they can buy it, and I can sell more. I'm just imagining a case study. So once you start looking at that, you'll start realizing, okay, cool, what are the ways that I can use video to my advantage? And there's many facets within that. For example, the power of influencers. Let's say, for example, you're targeting this specific group and they're absorbed by and fascinated by music.
Right.
So how do you use a music star or an influencer to distill and break down my product that it makes sense for them and understood, so eventually they can understand my product and buy it. So for me, is that was a very quick, brief and case study. Please don't take that and go take it home with you. But just to understand and make for you to understand and see the breakdown of it's not that I want video first. It's the fact that, okay, fine, what am I trying to achieve, and then what is the best format for that particular audience, yes. And then eventually how can I reach them? And it's not just online, but video as digital out of home, video as TV. There's different types of video. Right. So it's not just to. I think there's a craze, and when people see things on social media and they think, oh, we want to do that, but I think sometimes we don't realize, okay, fine, why do we want to do that? And I think once you start understanding and unpacking your actual strategic view of what you want to do, you'll start realizing, okay, fine, when you start, like what my colleague said, Ricardo, you'll start realizing what are you looking out for when you're measuring. Because it is true, we start looking at the small things, we're not looking at the bigger picture. Did people actually understand and absorb what you try to show them instead of watching the entire thing? So yeah, I hope I answered.
I think, yeah. So listen, guys, we are running out of time. In fact, we are out of time. So if there's any closing question or comment quickly before we get off the stage, I think we're just gonna wrap it up. Are there any closing comments quickly with the 2 minutes warning there?
Look, I think from my side, it's just making sure that if you're trying to go the omni-channel route, you're doing it in the correct way. So rather start with your own data and build it out from there, but don't just try and do the full scale of it when you're not equipped for that kind of scale. And secondly, just around personalization, personalize in the correct context. Don't just personalize for the sake of personalizing stuff, because then you're losing a higher percentage of your market.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think I've said quite a bit, but I think the key thing, sometimes as marketers, we forget to take on our consumer hat on, and we get so absorbed in what we do on our daily lives that we forget that we're also customers at the same time. So if it's one thing, is for everybody to scrutinize what we do, the content we bring out, and the creative that comes out, and look at it from, would I actually click on this? Would I watch this? And I think
if you're in the segment,
if you're in the segment, right. And I think once you start with that, then I think all of us.
Nice one. Thank you very much, guys. That was it.